Scholars, welcome back to the Counselor's Office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and we are back with another video. We're live again. We're doing more, we're recording live, more interaction with the chat. Eventually, we'll have chat on screen as well, so you can just read it for yourself. But we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and we are gonna cover a story that I just posted this morning, or the other morning, whenever this comes out. Jason Schreier has spoken about the sexual allegations or the harassment allegations he made and how he was called out for being a liar. We're going to react to that. But first, I get the distinct pleasure of popping one of these. And no, it's not a boner. I get to pop this for you guys. Woo! It's Comment of the Day. That's right, comment of the day, and today we've got from Hades. At this point, Sony should sell off the Destiny IP, but I know Sony is too prideful and stupid to do it. You are absolutely correct. They're too incompetent, and they really should. There it is. How'd you like it? Our new and improved comment of the day for your beautiful faces. But we're going to jump straight into the video, so let's do that real quick. I'm going to make it a habit, hit these buttons. Boom. Jason Schreier, the link will be down below, by the way, so you guys know whenever we decide to jump into and watch the video. You can watch the video yourself. The truth behind sexual harassment at Blizzard. So let's go ahead and pause there. Badoo.
Hello, it's One Take Schreier, and
oh, I should take this opportunity to mention for members, I'm going to try to do better by making sure that members get priority in videos because you're paying for it. So members get priority. Even if you say some stupid stuff, you still get your moment. But let's react and see what Jason Schreier,
the outrage
has to say about the situation.
Merchants are at it again.
Oh.
Hello, it's One Take Schreier, and the
One Take Schreier. Sorry, I know I'm doing a lot of. I just want to make sure everything's primed for this.
outrage merchants are at it. Again, today's claim is that the allegations of sexual harassment at Blizzard are false and that somehow I made them all up. If you're lucky enough to not be familiar with this world, there are a number of culture warriors out there who tweet all day about various agreements, whether or not they are true. And it
immediately, he's only 30 seconds in and he's already deflecting. 30 seconds in, this guy, I've never watched any of his videos. He's doing a Paul Tassi. But he's immediately deflecting. He's already setting the foundation. And I'm not against him. Like I'm coming in as someone who doesn't really fully grasp the full situation. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. Like I'm not assuming that he is. There's just information that's been put out. So I want to hear from his voice. But you never start a conversation by immediately blaming and attacking people. Like if you're trying to be genuine and you're like, hey, man, these are allegations against me. This is not how you come to the tables. You don't just start, you don't go to a table and bust a beer bottle against someone's head. That's how you start a bar fight.
attempt to elicit intense emotional reactions from.
I know I'm pausing a lot, but he's not having anything in the background. I need some background music.
Their viewers. These people aren't reporters. They don't actually talk to anyone involved or ask questions. They just kind of tweet and post videos, but they do have reach and sometimes bring in large audiences. This is part of a whole ecosystem that just rewards and leads to people getting paid for spreading misinformation on the internet. And normally I just kind of ignore this part of the internet, like in the same way that you would ignore someone in Times Square screaming that the world is coming to an end.
But you're not. You are immediately, if what they were saying that you just ignore, then you wouldn't make a video. But it's not just, the problem is it's not these culture vultures that he's portraying them to be. Which there might be. There definitely probably is. But there's a bunch of other like like the main problem, and based on what I've seen, is that the courts have shown that there was no substantial claims, and you wrote a book that went into detail about these claims. So you are, in your own words, a culture vulture. Like you are what you are calling all these other people. You are no better than they are because you did the exact same thing. So instead of just blaming them, defend yourself, because deflecting and pointing like not about me, what about them? What about them? What about you? What about you?
Because of gays in the military. But actually today I did want to address it because I think this is a good opportunity to talk about a very serious, very important issue and try to explain it in a way that captures the nuances and complexities of it all. And unlike those squealing cretins, I actually spend most of my time as a reporter on the...
He's so mad. You listen, I'm bad because I yap. This is a 20-minute video. You are almost a minute 30 seconds in, and you've done nothing but attack other people. He's so mad, and you know it's bothering him. And I can tell. I don't even need a psych degree to tell that this guy is triggered, because he is trying to throw as many. This is also what we like to call intellectual dishonesty. I have not a button for that.
You see how this looks, right?
That's right. Intellectual dishonesty. Whoops, wrong button. Intellectual dishonesty. That's exactly what it is that they're trying to muddy the water, muddy the conversation before the conversation's had, instead of actually just upfront defending themselves and just getting right into it. They're laying the foundation, the dirt, and muddying it up. You know, that's what it is, duh. But they're putting, instead of a conversation, they're dumping a bunch of dirt. So the conversation isn't what's actually supposed to be brought to the table. The conversation is all the mud that's on the table. Like, why is this here? Can't wait to see how other people respond to the video. We will look at the comment section just to see. But I just want to say, like, this is not right now does not seem like a good faith video. It is more vitriolic than I've seen. Like, even Paul Tassie's said comments before, but not even to this. Like, this feels more of, hey, I'm just going to use this video to sling mud, versus I'm defending myself. And it's never a good sign. It's just not.
Day on the phone. Well, I spent all day on the phone with people who are involved in these stories, asking them questions, trying to corroborate their accounts with other people so I can piece together what actually happened. Right. And so today's video that I'm going to talk about is based on two main sources. One is an article that I published in Bloomberg in August 2021.
What about your book?
Show notes. And the other is my book, Play Nice, about the history of Blizzard, published in October of 2024. Fun fact, the same outrage merchants who are now claiming that I destroyed Blizzard.
Sorry, he said culture. He said outrage merchants, but I've also heard culture vulture. I don't know why I just had a brain fart. But they're both the same thing. Culture vulture, outrage merchants, it's the same lingo.
Making up sexual harassment claims have actually spent the last 5 years or so claiming that I kept quiet about sexual harassment claims, just to kind of give you a look at the type of intellect that we're dealing with here. But
okay, again, muddying the water. Guys, they said I was against it. I was against it. Now I'm like, the whole argument is they accuse me of one thing, now they're accusing me of another. This is why you shouldn't believe anything they say. Just get to the facts. Get the facts. That's all people. No one gives a shit about what you think about these people. You debunk them with facts. Where's the facts, Jack?
Let's zoom out, because I do think this is really worth talking about. So in 2021, July of 2021, the California government sued Activision Blizzard for sexual harassment and misconduct. It was a big, explosive lawsuit. A lot of the claims, most of the claims really focused on Blizzard, the maker of Warcraft and Overwatch and Diablo and StarCraft. This lawsuit included a lot of salacious details, some of which I subsequently reported were false, but we'll get to that. And it led to these massive effects for Blizzard and Activision as a whole. It led to protests and walkouts, eventually the sale of Activision Blizzard to Microsoft. One thing, by the way, I won't be talking about is the allegation in the lawsuit that a woman committed suicide as a result of harassment against her, because that is very complicated, very tricky. It involves Activision, not Blizzard. It was a woman within Activision, not within Blizzard Entertainment. And there's been a lot of kind of details surrounding that story that are very hazy and hard to prove. It's very difficult to prove why someone killed themselves or to be able to say that definitively. Her parents, the parents of the woman who killed herself, actually filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Activision Blizzard and then took it back, withdrew it. It's really messy. It's not something I'm going to get into because I don't have all.
Because they probably didn't have substantial evidence to prove it's true. Like, that's the bottom dollar. Not to say that it wasn't true. It could have been if the workplace is that toxic. And by the way, I just want to make it clear, I don't give a shit about Blizzard. Like, I'm not like saying, I'm not trying to be like a Blizzard boy trying to defend. I have no stake in this. And to be honest, as someone who's very anti-greedy corpo, it wouldn't surprise me. We've seen this kind of behavior across the board. It would not surprise me that some of this, there's some truth. But I think the problem is there's a lot of exaggeration. Around this time, there was a lot of exaggeration. Listen, I don't want to dismiss Me Too. There was a lot of real moments, especially men who came out and, you know, would have never came out if it wasn't for some support for that. Hey, I was, you know, sexually harassed or, you know, all that jazz, right? All these reports. But there was a lot of exaggeration and trend chasing, and it's not anything to do me trying to dismiss Me Too. I'm just stating reality is that a lot of people like to do trend chase. They like to jump aboard with the mass group hysteria. They like to partake. They want the attention, and unfortunately that has done also harm, because people will have constantly looked at those moments and used it as a way to discount real victims. Not to say that that's always happening and people are always doing that, but I'm just saying that there are bad actors on both sides, and it was definitely exaggerated with those bad actors in this situation. That's just my general thought. I'm not going to say that everything that Blizzard was a lie, though most of the substantial claims from this lawsuit seem there's nothing to substantiate it, right? Zolf, yeah, I could imagine how regular people suing big corpo probably don't have much resources to spend on the lawyer, hence the withdrawal. Yeah, that, or they could have been paid under the table. I'm very distrusting of corporations. It wouldn't surprise me if they could have also paid on the table, like, hey, we'll give you this sum. If you take us to court, you will lose more money than you will ever get. So take the settlement under the table. Who knows? We don't know, right? Beforehand, we've got a word from our sponsors, and the sponsor is me. So enjoy.
Players, you know you want to hit that subscribe button. That's right, players. Hit that subscribe button, like the video. Don't forget to hit that bell. When you subscribe, you're going to hit that little bell, and there might be another bell. Hit those bells. Ring my bell, player. Ring my bell. Come on, you know you want to subscribe to the channel. Player, if you don't subscribe to the channel, you're a broke boy, and I'm saying it. Now, if you excuse me, I've got to go ruin some modern games by adding more MTX. That's right, baby.
All right. Yeah, that was something new we've added. I'm really bad about asking people to subscribe to the channel, but appreciate those that do. Let's continue with the video.
Of the facts surrounding it, because in that case, I wasn't able to talk to the victim involved because unfortunately she has passed away. She has died by suicide. I'm going to focus on the stuff that I can prove and corroborate and the people that I've actually talked to. So, okay.
Based.
2 years after this lawsuit started, but that Activision Blizzard had become part of Microsoft. In December of 2023, California and Activision settled for $54 million. This was after the Microsoft deal had closed, so no longer run by the same people, different kind of entity, and that settlement was likely a whole part of that. And many of the women who worked for Activision Blizzard at various and during time periods that were kind of included in the lawsuit got checks as a result of that, sometimes significant checks in the 5 figures. And the language of the settlement, including the following, I'm going to read this entire thing. Okay. Quote, no court or any independent investigation has substantiated any allegations that there has been systemic or widespread sexual harassment at Activision Blizzard, that Activision Blizzard senior executives ignored, condoned, or tolerated a culture of systemic harassment, retaliation, or...
Okay, I'm glad he's reading the facts. Sounds like it was all, like, most of the information, not to say there was any other claims, but the beef of the claims seemed like it was bullshit. Who would have thought?
Discrimination, or that Activision Blizzard's board of directors, including its chief executive officer, Robert Kotick, acted improperly with regard to the handling of any instances of workplace misconduct. So that language is at the core of this week's outrage merchant argument that the whole thing was bullshit. This happened 3 years ago, but I guess the culture warriors only discovered it now, which again shows you the kind of intellect we're dealing with here.
It's hard to give, like, you've done nothing. So all you've done is attack, bring the facts of the court case, and then attack. You've done nothing to alleviate and defend yourself. You've only shown that you're angry. You're angry because you're being called out. You're on the carpet. Which I'm leaning more to the fact that you were caught. You were caught in a lie because you were very, very defensive. Like, if it was me and I was a professional and I wrote a book, I would just immediately start with the facts. Like, this is what happened. This is ABC. Here's my 8-minute video. I'm done. We're not about to get a 20-minute video where you're going to continue talking about the outrage merchants. And also, I hate this again, muddying the water. Oh, because this happened 3 years ago, people must have just now figured it out. There was a lot going on during the Me Too and all that situation. There was a lot of shit going on back then. Also, people thought it was taken care of because people lost their jobs. They were acquired by Activision, or what? Yeah, not Activision, but they were acquired by Xbox. Was it Xbox? Shit, I forgot. Who owned Blizzard? Activision Blizzard? I don't. They were acquired. Anyways, there was a lot of shit that happened that even I don't remember all the specifics. And I was around the parts. So it's very disingenuous. Again, and I'm not gonna hit the button, but intellectual dishonesty to sit there and assume that everyone's in the know and or remembers every little detail. But when you hear a court case that says it was all BS, what's gonna happen? What people do remember is all these journalists, all these articles that were Microsoft. Thank you, Hades. All these journalists that went with a dagger and helped propel and attack the reputation of law developers, and it hurt a lot of people. That's the big thing. What happened? It wasn't just the ladies or whoever was accusing. It hurt people's actual reputation as a developer, because if they tried to get a job, they saw these people as problematic or didn't want to be involved. So he's dismissing the other part of this whole dilemma. The reason why people are upset is because real people were hurt, which is funny because people like him and a lot of other people will virtue signal about, oh, we shouldn't celebrate people losing their jobs, whereas now people are upset about people losing the job. So now it's people just outright merchants. That's what's going on. People who had their reputation hurt, and people are upset at you for saying X, Y, and Z So now it's not okay. It's very interesting how wishy-washy these people are. And I say these people because I don't like most journalists because they're usually snakes. So far, I'm seeing a snake that has yet to do anything but deflect and attack other people. Yeah, this is a career-ending type of thing. Exactly.
But look, I'm not going to talk about them anymore. I'm going to talk about the truth of what actually happened at Blizzard, because despite the language in this settlement, there were a lot of women who spoke out about their experiences, and I can share some of their stories.
Okay, but the court, I'm going to say this as I believe in the justice system, even though it is flawed, it is the only thing we have. It's either justice system or anarchy. I will always go with the justice system. I do not give a shit what the words of individuals are. If the court has spent 3 years through investigations and all that jazz, and they have not found any substantial evidence, I'm sorry. That's good enough for me. And if I can't trust them to do their job, then we have anarchy. Sorry. Until we have unless there's substantial evidence to prove that we can't trust them to do the basics of an investigation, then I'm going to side with the courts here. So I don't give a shit what the testimony is. I do not give a shit. The courts have looked at probably those testimonies. They have investigated those testimonies and found fuck all. And this seems like this is more pandering to the emotional side. Like, the court said this, but here's what the ladies have to say. Listen, I'm all for believing the ladies, but the court has investigated. They did their job. I don't give a shit, and neither should we. Someone's lying.
So first of all, by the way, there were actually two lawsuits, a state lawsuit and a federal lawsuit. And this settlement was only for one of them, the state one. The federal lawsuit was settled for $18 million and did not have the same language, did not say anything.
Okay, what was the language for that then?
California did. There's actually one of the reasons this.
We're also talking about California. Probably one of the most liberal, is the most liberal state, and is probably pretty pro female and, anti-corpo. They're always looking out for, trying to look out for everyone else, especially the ladies. Listen, if it was like Texas or something, you might have an argument. We're talking about fucking California. Get the fuck out of here.
This whole so also messy is that the state investigators and federal investigators got into political squabbles, and there's a whole lot of details involving Gavin Newsom and accusations about him interfering in this that I'm not going to get into here.
Why?
But if you're interested,
that is information you need to bring. Stop talking about the chuds and the chads. Talk about that information.
in the legal drama, there's a little bit more there that you can find online here and there, and parts of that have still not been quite told. That story still isn't 100% clear of how all that went down.
This doesn't
but
clear
I think
you.
that might help explain why there's still a couple of questions surrounding the lawsuits of it all. But let's put that aside. Let's look at all the actual facts. And I think one thing that's really important
We're
here.
6 minutes in, and we're just finally getting to the facts. Listen, I make a lot of fucking videos, but I'm tearing this video fucking up. I'm just destroying it. My God, I know a yap, but I'm not a professional journalist that's on the spotlight where people are, essentially accusing me of lying to make profit off of my book and articles. Like, you need to be clean cut and direct. I don't know what script you wrote. You probably didn't write one. You might want to get tips from Paul Tassi.
If you've watched my other videos, you know this, but oftentimes when you try to reduce a story to a binary of like, is it true? Is it not true? Especially a story that's as complicated as allegations of widespread harassment and a culture of misconduct. And
it's not complex. If the court investigates, you have the legal system, not little Timmys, not journalists. You have investigators go in. They talk to eyewitnesses. They take reports. They go through, documents. They scrub through everything, more so than what a journalist can do, more so than what I can do or whatever dude on Twitter can do. And if they find that there is no substantial evidence or any way to support these claims, that's it. There is no other higher bar of clearance of, that's it. There's nothing else. No one gives a shit about journalists. No one gives a shit about Twitter or what people say. The court is the highest bar of checking the box of, is this true or is this not? There's nothing complex. There's no need to think about complexity because the court did it for you.
Sexual discrimination that really does a disservice to a reality.
Better put a count down how many times he says getting to the facts, then proceeds to talk about something else. Oh my God.
Reality is more nuanced and more complicated than that, because actually two things in this case are simultaneously true. One is that the California lawsuit was misleading and full of inaccuracies. You can write anything in a lawsuit here in the United States, and that one had a lot of things wrong. The other thing that's true is that many of the women who have worked for Blizzard over the last few decades have felt mistreated by the company. And I think that it's important to note that harassment is one thing. I think any company that...
Okay. He's not wrong. Multiple things can be true. What can be true is, you're right. Women being, mistreated does not equal harassment. Sexual harassment is not maybe necessarily anything that you could do about that. Maybe complain to HR, but there's not much you can do unless it's, substantial. But being treated badly, well, a lot of people get treated badly in the workplace. There should be some protections for that. Don't know in the gaming world, unfortunately. But the other true thing is, this still has nothing to fucking do with the fact that the court did their investigation and found it wasn't substantial. The attacks, the criticism, the reputational damage was because these ladies were harassed, some sexually. That is more substantial than some dude being an asshole to one of their employees. There's a difference. Being an asshole, being a sexual predator, being a harasser. One could get you in trouble with HR. One could get you, lose your job, your reputation, your career, everything, right? There's a difference. There's a power level. So he's trying to I don't like this language because it's watering down and trying to muddle things up by saying these two things can be true. The investigation was flawed. Oh, I'm still waiting how you're supposed to be defending yourself, because all I hear is deflect, deflect, deflect. Also, where's the facts? I have not heard fucking facts yet.
Reaches a certain size that gets into the thousands or tens of thousands is going to have incidents of harassment. It's really how the company chooses to deal with that harassment and the harassers themselves that creates a culture. So back in 2021, California lawsuit dropped. I did what any reporter would do. I started making phone calls. Before this, I'd heard a few details, a few anecdotes here and there, but not enough to actually be able to publish a substantial story, which one day down the road, I'll do a video about how I make stories and what you kind of need, the threshold of proof that you need to actually be able to do a story. But it wasn't enough at that point. So now the floodgates were open. People were open to sharing their experiences. People were going on social media talking about their experiences. At the time for this Bloomberg story that I published, I spoke to about 50 current and former employees. And the reality, of course, was nuanced. I mean, for starters, Blizzard was a massive organization with thousands of employees and dozens of divisions, and your experiences there would be drastically different depending on where you worked and who you worked with. The Overwatch team had a different culture than the Diablo team, and nothing was quite like the Battle.net team. I'll get to that. And of course, Blizzard in the 1990s was very different than Blizzard in modern times. If you want to read about the old days, a lot of that is in plain nice.
You are talking about a lot of shit that doesn't fucking matter. Get to your... You know what you need to do? Outline. Here's what the court said. Here's my claims. And here's how I'm defending these claims against what was said. Versus, here's a lot of word vomit and explaining a bunch of bullshit, deflecting, blaming, watering things down. You're doing a lot of extra bullshit. You know, when you're over explaining things, it's usually a sign of lying. Yes, that's what it is. It's a deceptive tactic. It's information overload so that people will be like, okay, some people are so simple minded that they will just take all the information and be like, okay, they seem like they know what they're talking about. Okay, yeah, okay, I believe them. There are definitely people that are like that.
For now, let's focus on the modern times. Some women said, hey, I had very positive experiences at Blizzard. Others said they were harassed frequently and felt discriminated against. Many women told me that working at Blizzard was kind of a paradox for them. This was a very common theme. This is a place where they had some of the best times of their lives, met some of their closest friends, people who they got married to or were in their wedding parties, who they're lifelong friends. Yet it was also a place that felt like it didn't treat men and women equally. And working at Blizzard meant kind of trying to wrap your head around that paradox where it's kind of some of the best times of your life and some of the worst times in your life. Often for stories like this, the people involved want to stay anonymous, and many of them did, but actually some were willing to speak on the record about their experiences and are quoted by name in my reporting. So I can give you specific names and accounts from these women. There was Cher Scar.
And that's fine. But when the court does investigations and they say they don't find anything substantial, then no one gives a fuck about those. I can make a stating and say that my years at Walmart, there was I was harassed. One of the employees would grab my ass, and I can make that claim. Just because someone makes a fucking claim doesn't mean it's true. Do you know how you actually see if it's true? Is you have the courts, the legal system get involved. They do an investigation. They fact check. They just look at everything and see what's going on. When you have a third party involved and they say they do not find any substantial, proof of this, then no one gives a shit, and nor should we. Not to say that they weren't treated badly. We should give a shit about that. But is this something that people should have lost their job or should have, had reputational damage and dragged through the mud? Probably not.
Who told me for a Bloomberg story that she was groped at holiday parties. There's Nikki Broderick, who told me that a bunch of things, but one
which is cool, because then the courts would have found that and looked at the information and been like, oh, we have evidence. But obviously there wasn't evidence.
Anecdote that she told me is that a person she worked with looked at her and said,
oh my God, there's no fucking way. Are you about to, is someone about to give her the third party information? No way.
Quote, her ass looks great in those shorts. And as a result of that, she never wore shorts into the office again. She told me about various times where she complained about things to HR and nothing was ever done about it.
Which, if the courts had investigated that and they saw the multiple reports and nothing was done, that would have been on record or some way. Like, there's no shot if you have all these reports, the court would be like, nah. Especially in California, I do not believe you could. I would have given more slack to this information if this was like, I'm gonna be. This might piss some people off. It was a Republican Party. I'm sorry if it was like a Republican Party state. I would have been more. Listen, I'm not throwing hate, but I'm just saying, out of all the 50 states, California is the last fucking one where you're gonna convince me that the court was against the women. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. As someone that's going to be all overly protective, even people call California the woke state. Like, there's no fucking way you're going to convince me that the state of California and the courts did investigations and we're like, nah. And we already heard some of the muddling of that excuse, like, oh, there was drama between Gavin and whatever else. Okay. Yeah, you're trying to water the conversation there. I'm not going to believe that bullshit. If it was actually relevant facts, you would have provided those specific facts versus the rambling that is fucking going on.
To Connie Griffith, who told me that in executive meetings, when she was an executive assistant at the time, she would hear some of the top men at the company complaining about hiring women, saying, if we hire these women, we got to be more careful around them. Broderick and many of the other women who worked for Blizzard told me they compared their salaries to male colleagues and found that they were paid less, even when they had the same or even more experiences. In fact, Broderick's husband actually wound up leapfrogging her at the company. They both worked for Blizzard and wound up making...
Again, then you could be able to sue, and the courts would be able to do that. Now, this may be a case where they just didn't have the funds to do it, But I feel like you should leave then. By the way, being paid less is not harassment. It's shitty if it's true, but it's not harassment. Where we go, we're derailing this conversation. Well, I got paid less. In this conversation that we're having about harassment, who gives a fuck? We're talking about harassment. Getting paid less is not harassment.
More over his time there, despite the fact that she had more experience at Blizzard than he did. 6 different women for the Bloomberg story, and even more later on, told me about incidents where they were harassed by men. They went to HR, reported those incidents, and HR did nothing. Even there's a little bit of nuance, because sometimes HR might actually take disciplinary actions against men, but not tell the people who reported it. That itself is kind of a problem, but there are ethical and legal complications there.
I love the little detail. All these women reported, but nothing happened. But at the same time, we don't know, because technically they can't tell them. Yeah, and like, especially I'm going to tell you right now, like if you're Tom, like for my job when we're dealing with kids, it's called FERPA. You cannot give personal information and especially identifying information to other adults, other situations. You cannot tell one parent. If one kid punched their kid in the face, you cannot tell the other parent what you did with that kid, what consequence. It's none of their damn business. The law says you cannot tell that parent what, and that's how it is. But it's interesting that he was like, well, they didn't say anything. Oh, well, there's legal complications. Just because it's the funny thing is, especially I say this whenever the dean or the principal, they'll say this, just because we don't tell you what happens doesn't mean nothing happens. You just assume nothing happens. And I feel like this is what the adult version of that, of you just assume nothing happened when the court probably investigated and saw, oh, well, there was consequences. So this is obviously not true and fabricated.
Those women came away feeling like nothing had been done. They still had to see some of those same men every day. Sometimes it was their bosses. Sometimes it was people who were above them. It contributed to this feeling overall among women. And this is a common theme that I've heard, that their issues were.
What do you want that people usually, especially when you're working at a professional job, you get warnings and then you get coached and then you get fired, right? There's multiple steps. This is the same shit that you see at at a school level, where parents hear something from little Timmy and then they go and they tell school, I want that kid out of the school. No, just because your kid had a problem with this other kid, we're not going to remove them from the school because you want them to. And it's the same shit here as an adult. Yes, if you're saying that they're being a piece of shit, we dealt the thing, whatever it is. They're upset because what they actually wanted was that person to be fired. They didn't get what they want, so I'm not getting protected. Shut up. Now there's cases where that's not true, where they're not being protected. And this isn't one of them, because the court would have seen that.
Not being addressed. And then there was Battle.net. Battle.net, if you're not familiar, Battle.net is the service that Blizzard uses to sell and distribute their games online. And there was a big Battle.net department that incorporated. It was kind of like the tech department, IT department. It had all these reorgs, change of names all the time. But under a guy named Ben Kilgore, who was the chief technology officer, it felt like a frat house. People would take shots during meetings and vomit in trash cans. I swear to God, I heard all sorts of crazy stories about these hazing rituals.
I heard crazy stories. Now, if you have multiple parroting, that it might be true. There's a good chance. But at the same time, you just heard
that people had to go through. Alcohol was such a big problem at Blizzard and overall, but especially in the Battle.net department, that the company actually temporarily banned drinking at holiday parties at one point, and then later said it was instituting a 2-drink minimum at these parties, because people would just kept getting drunk and causing problems and driving drunk, and alcohol was just everywhere. It was a real problem.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Ben Kilgore, who ran the tech department, in fact, he was the chief technology officer. In fact, he was being lined up as the successor to Mike Morhaime, the CEO of the company. He was going to be the next CEO of the company, was then fired in 2018 after an investigation into his behavior and allegations surrounding him sleeping with.
Oh, so you're saying Blizzard dealt with a problem. They didn't ignore the problem. They actually removed the problem? You don't say.
the subordinates. He was actually fired for lying to the investigators, according to people who know what happened or familiar with the investigation. The lawsuit, I think it actually missed a lot of important parts of Blizzard's culture that I've explored in my reporting, like the lack of boundaries between professional and personal lives at Blizzard. One, call it a quirk of Blizzard, was that many of the executives there were either dating or married to lower level employees, which led to a lot of uncomfortable situations from the CEO and multiple people in the C-suite on down.
So they were dating. They were in a relationship. You personally don't like that. And because the court didn't investigate relationships, consenting adult relationships, you think that the court is wrong? By the way, where's the fucking harassment? Bro, I don't give a shit if the CEO is having sex with the secretary, if it's consenting and they're in a consenting relationship, unless he's using his power to control her and, you know, demand this happens. If they're both consenting and this is a happy relationship, who the fuck cares, bro?
I mean, for example, imagine if you have an issue with someone and turns out they're married to the person who runs Blizzard.
That happens anywhere. What do you think, the manager of McDonald's is dating one of the chefs and you get mad? Like, oh shit, now I'm gonna lose my job because I made the chef mad and the manager is gonna fire me. That happens anywhere. What the fuck are you going on about? It even happens in my school.
You do about that, or like one of the top executives at Blizzard, what do you do about that? Another quirk, and I mentioned this in the book, is that several Blizzard employees were open swingers and would have...
How does this have to do with harassment? Brother in Christ! What? You're gonna make me crash out. You call yourself a journalist. What does this have to do with the harassment claims? Where's the facts? Holy shit, you know what, Jason Schreier, you have earned one of these. Congratulations.
Everybody knows you never go full retard. You went full retard, man. Never go full retard. Everybody knows.
Oh my God. Word vomit equals lying. I believe it, Hades. At this point, I'm losing my goddamn mind. If it's consenting adults, that is not harassment. Oh no, work relationship's so scary. Oh shit, people are happy and in love with each other. Jason Schreier's weakness is happiness. Jason Schreier's weakness is relationships and couples. And he's upset he wasn't invited to the swinger party.
Sex parties that they would invite colleagues to.
Okay.
This stuff, I mean, a lot of these people, it was consensual. It was not something that was people. I didn't hear any stories about people feeling like they were forced to do any of this again.
It was, you just admit, why are you talking about it? If it's all consensual and it was just invitation, no one's harassing, like, what picture are you trying to paint, Picasso? Because I don't see the image. I don't see the vision. Like, focus on the harassment. Yes. So far, all I've heard is that they're kind of freaky. They like to party. They're a little freaky, but that has nothing to do with the fucking, harassment. Get to the point, Jack.
Against their will, but still it contributed to this environment where, again, it just felt like there was no boundary between personal and professional lives. By the way, Blizzard is based in Irvine, California, and a lot of people move to Irvine for this job to work at Blizzard, and so their professional and personal lives wound up intertwined because all of their friends and the people they made and the people they met and hung out with worked for Blizzard. So just kind of quirks of the culture that I think contributed to a lot of the problems that women felt like they had to deal with. And then
I agree with this, but at the same time, you just said it's all consensual. I have not. Who gives a shit if they don't like? If you don't like, the work culture is, hey, this is what we do in our free time. We're swingers. We have relationships. It's half the video by now.
And there's the Cosby suite, which has
this is the part. This was the whole thing about the Cosby suite was debunked.
lasting sign of Blizzard's debauchery. This idea of this hotel suite that was dedicated to alleged rapist Bill Cosby. It all started in the California lawsuit, which said, I'm going to quote, Afrasiabi was so known to engage in harassment of females that his suite was nicknamed the Crosby Suite after alleged rapist Bill Crosby. Quick side note, the fact that they call it Bill Crosby, I think just kind of shows you how sloppy the lawsuit was in general. But still, let's...
The lawsuit was sloppy. Bro. Yeah, I agree the typo is... Like, okay, we're literally pulling at threads. It's sloppy because there was a typo. That the whole court case is dismissed. Again, if this was anywhere but fucking California, I would agree. I would be more receptive to the statement. You are not going to convince me to think less that this court case and investigation because it takes place in California.
Get into this. By Afrasiabi, they are referring to a guy named Alex Afrasiabi, who was a company veteran. He was a top director on World of Warcraft for a while, and he was also infamous at Blizzard as someone who was accused of wrongdoing by multiple women, but still managed to stick around. For play nice about...
And funny enough, the courts have not found anyone guilty.
Nearly a dozen people who were interviewed for the book told me that they had either experienced, seen, or heard about sexual harassment conducted by Afrasiabi.
Also, someone had made a comment about this. There is no fucking way people are that stupid to name a hotel or a room the Cosby Suite and everyone knows about it. That is the easiest lawsuit, the easiest, red flag. I just don't believe it. Now, people are stupid, and there are some people that are that stupid for sure, but I don't believe it. Not in California, where they won't take that shit, especially during the Me Too time. Oh, fuck you. I definitely don't believe this shit.
But let's talk about the Cosby Suite or the Crosby Suite. I'm going to tell you a story from Michelle Morrow, who is an actress and writer who worked with Blizzard, who was connected with Blizzard, would often do hosting stuff for BlizzCon and interviews on camera, that sort of thing. And this story is published in Play Nice. It's something that I reported out over the few years leading up to the book's publication. So
sure,
it's BlizzCon in the fall of 2013, and Michelle Morrow is out to dinner with Dave Kosak, who's a designer on World of Warcraft, and his wife Crystal Kosak. Alex Afrasiabi drunkenly stumbles over, and according to Michelle Morrow, he starts hitting on her. Now, just to give you a little insight into the reporting process, when I hear a story like this, I will always try to talk to everyone was there. So Afrasiabi declined to comment, but Dave Kosak confirmed all of the details that Morrow shared and said, backed all this up, corroborated this stuff. So Morrow tells me, I'm going to quote from Michelle Morrow, he told me if I married him, referring to Afrasiabi, he told me if I married him, I'd have the keys to Blizzard, whatever the fuck that means. So this is going on for a little bit. Eventually Dave Kosak takes Afrasiabi, guides him away from the table. Kind of a tough thing to do because Afrasiabi is Kosak's boss at the time. The next night, still
he's drunk. I'm not dismissing, by the way. That's not like if you're at a professional dinner or if you're having colleagues, like even if you're the boss, like you shouldn't be getting hammered or at least acting like a jackass. Like I'm not gonna say, but he's also fucking drunk. Like who the fuck takes any drunk ass person seriously? I'm sorry. I'm not gonna take anything that comes out of a drunk person's mouth seriously. I'd be more disturbed that they got plastered and they're the boss. Like I would ridicule them for that.
They're all going to a party at Afrasiabi's hotel room, which everybody called the Cosby Suite. This was 2013. This had
everyone. Yes, everyone called it the Cosby Suite. Oh, everyone.
This was happening, according to quite a few people I've talked to who were involved with this, because of an inside joke that had started a few years back when the carpet in one of their previous hotel rooms at another hotel looked like Bill Cosby's sweater. And so they made it into a joke. They would bring pictures of Bill Cosby and they turned it into a whole thing about the Cosby Suite. There must always be a Cosby Suite, they would say. And on this group chat, Kosak writes that he's, quote, gathering the hot chicks for the cause. This is a group chat with him, Afrasiabi, and a few other Warcraft designers. Now, when Kosak says he's gathering the hot chicks, he's referring to Michelle Morrow and his wife in kind of a joking way. And Morrow confirmed this as well. So Maro tells me, we'll get to the group chat in a sec, but so remember, we're at BlizzCon, they're all going up to the hotel room, they're all going up to the Cosby suite, right? Maro tells me they get to the Cosby suite that night. She again has to fend off unwanted advances from Afrasiabi, but the night is otherwise uneventful. It's just kind of another BlizzCon party. So a year later, October 2014, a stand-up comedian named Hannibal Buress does a routine where he makes some jokes about Bill Cosby that resurface old rape accusations and wind up setting off this firestorm of new allegations and criminal proceedings. Dave Kosak tells me that at the time he joked to his wife, I guess we won't be calling it the Cosby suite anymore. But then in 2021, the lawsuit hits, and the gaming website Kotaku shares a photo of a bunch of Blizzard employees, including Dave Kosak, gathered in front of this framed picture of Bill Cosby in the suite. This picture, at the time in 2013, before these allegations were widely resurfaced and before a lot of people knew about them, seemed harmless. It seemed harmless in 2013, but now in 2021, after all of the trials and allegations and accusations, totally horrifying. By the way, in case you're wondering, I worked at Kotaku, but I left in 2020. This all happened a year later. This article was published a year after I left Kotaku. The article also publishes a screenshot of the group text, and the way they're able to get a screenshot of the group text and also this photo is that this was all published on Facebook. I believe it was on Alex Afrasiabi's Facebook at the time. So this was not something that was like some big hidden secret or leaked or anything. This is something they had published on Facebook because, again, at the time, it was not something that you would see a bunch of pictures, like you would not see a group of people in front of a framed photo of Bill Cosby and think anything was awry because it wasn't until a year after all this.
By the way, if it's true, even before the allegations came out, like, so you're telling me that they did call it the Bill Cosby suite, but it was before he was convicted? So it was just like bad. I feel like you should have been reporting that. Because they didn't actually name it after a rapist. They named it after someone that came out as, a rapist or whatever he was guilty for. It was like, this happened prior. Like, just, can we get to the facts? You should have started with all this from the get-go. Because I feel like that's the biggest thing was the whole Bill Cosby, because you helped, swelter that.
Happened that the idea of Bill Cosby being an alleged sex offender became ingrained in everybody's heads. So the article publishes a screenshot of the group text. The article doesn't really mention that the Bill Cosby allegations only resurfaced a year before the photos were taken.
Oh, there's the truth. The articles don't actually give the important information. Guys, that's crazy.
Also doesn't mention that the group text referred to Dave Kosak's wife and Michelle Morrow. And so I spoke to Michelle Morrow about this. Michelle Morrow was really pissed that Kotaku had published this. She felt like it was totally taken out of context, even though it was referring to her. And she felt like it was not right. Here's a quote from her in the book. Quote, "It was just surreal. Everyone was being unknowingly offended for me as the subject of this text when Dave Kosak is the one who protected me and did exactly what any man should do when their boss is being a creep." After the Kotaku article hit, Dave Kosak, who had left Blizzard and was now working as a creative director at Deviation Games, was fired. I also spoke to a designer named Paul Cazares, who was also in the photo. He was working at ZeniMax Online Studios, and he was fired from his job there shortly after the Kotaku article went live. He told me, actually, that he felt like this photo has disrupted his career, despite the fact that he has not been accused of any wrongdoing. All he did was appear in a photo with a framed picture of Bill Cosby a year before allegations of Bill Cosby's rape were widely resurfaced and set off a firestorm in the...
So far, everything he's saying is, whoops. These people are being hurt, which, granted, he did put it in his book, but you sensationalized. It felt like there was I'm going to blame him and say that he is in the wrong, because if a lot of this, especially the biggest bullet, which was everyone claiming the Bill Cosby as see the culture, you have been encouraged. You tried to set up the foundation of that. Oh, look at the culture, even though this is not true. It is true in another way. That's this snake in the grass is try to build up to this. He literally built up to the whole thing. Absolute snake in the grass.
Press and in United States culture. And let me quote Michelle Morrow again. She said, I can't speak for everyone else's experiences, but when I was in that room, there was nothing nefarious except for Alex. Other women and men that I've talked to who were at this Cosby suite party in 2013 said the exact same thing. Alex Afrasiabi being a drunk kind of creep in their view, nothing else going awry. That's not to say there weren't other issues at BlizzCon, because BlizzCon, I think, was known as a place where a lot of Blizzard employees would get drunk and sometimes there would be wrongdoing and bad behavior. But in this particular case, it was just him, according to Michelle Morrow and other people. So here's the thing about this story. It also, despite the fact that it became this wrong, incorrect symbol of Blizzard's debauchery that everybody got wrong, Kotaku, and then all of the other all the other websites that kind of followed it, worth noting, we at Bloomberg at the time pointed out that it was referring to the sweater and that it was not kind of a suite dedicated to a rapist. But besides the fact, the story actually did capture a real problem at Blizzard, which is that everybody seemed to know about the behavior displayed by Alex Afrasiabi, but nobody did anything about it. And it wasn't until the spring of 2020, 7 years after that, that Afrasiabi was fired from Blizzard for what a spokesperson later called, quote, misconduct in his treatment of other employees. So he was eventually fired, took a very long time. So what do we make of all this? I want to
Probably because they needed substantial evidence. Like, just because someone says something doesn't make it true. Again, it's you just because you say something or you don't like someone doesn't mean you can just get them fired. I mean, some places you probably could, but like, you just don't throw them out. And we've also, like, just to be also very, like, to be very fair, if we've learned anything from Bungie and their downfall, leadership is literally the last fucking people to get any consequence. So to be fair, that is also a true statement.
Many things are true at once. And I think one of the biggest problems behind this kind of world of Twitter misinformation is how everything just gets reduced to these sound bites and people just don't seem to have room in their heads for nuance. Many things are true at once. One is that the California lawsuit was misleading and full of inaccuracies. Another is that the lawsuit...
Again, I hate that you are just LARPing on this, literally trying to muddy the waters. No. You think you perceive it as because, where there's people having normal relationships and you think that's wrong, and that you listed a bunch of shit that isn't harassment. It was all consensual, except for like the parts where you got to the beef about the one dude being a absolute dick face. But everything else, there was no substantial claims by the court. And you're trying to dismiss the court, not in fucking California. Either you nut up and put out, the actual information, what it is bar by bar, what the facts are, or you shut the fuck up.
That lawsuit was settled for $55 million, and the language of the settlement said that no court or independent investigation had substantiated the allegations. But a third thing that's true is that many, many women have spoken out about having negative experiences at Blizzard with harassment.
Again, if it was their actual harassment and that was this lawsuit was being harassed, then they would see that. But at the same time, being mean doesn't equal, or not being kind, or, treating someone less doesn't equal harassment. It just means you're a shitty employee or boss, which we see that. Guess what? At Bungie and all the other studios that get shut down because leadership is a bunch of dumbasses.
And discrimination and misconduct. And they've spoken to me. They've spoken to other reporters. There were other stories that hit after that lawsuit. They've spoken up on social media. They've talked to friends. They've posted in group chats. They've written.
Because of that, it's all true. I posted on Twitter. I talked to Instagram. I went to TikTok, and I said my boss slapped me on the ass. So it means it's true, right?
Game development forums, they have talked about this extensively. The thing that people don't seem to understand a lot of the times, especially in the gaming world, is that life is not Phoenix Wright. There's no binaries. There are no contradiction. That can't be right. Stories about sexual harassment, especially a lot of stories, but especially stories about sexual harassment, are always going to be messy, complicated, and nuanced. And I think in this case, it's clear, and I've talked to enough people to substantiate this, that there were very real problems at Blizzard. Even Mike Morhaime, the founder of the company, co-founder of the company, and CEO for many years, apologized for what had happened at Blizzard. After the lawsuit hit, he spent days on video calls talking to his former employees. There were a lot of people who accused him of knowing about some of the problematic people at the company, many of whom I haven't mentioned here, but Alex Afrasiabi is just one of many people across Blizzard who have been accused of wrongdoing, some of whom were fired after the lawsuit hit. And after this all went down, he actually wrote a long statement and he said, look, to the Blizzard women who experienced any of these things.
Yes, but that's a corpo play. It is very obvious that was what's going to happen. You can't have all this happen and then the leaders be like, we're getting sued, all this stuff. Oh, we're going to wave it away. It's very, like, even when Sony canned half the Bungie team, they gave out a PR bullshit statement. It happened. Doesn't mean that he admits guilt. It just means he's trying to appease fucking people because it's a fucking shitstorm.
I am extremely sorry that I failed you. All right. I'll see you all next time.
Okay, I think he did a substantially shitty job at defending himself. He spent 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes worth of, deflecting, attacking other people, in just yam, listing a bunch of shit that wasn't facts, not corroborated by actual facts. Just because someone says something doesn't make it fact. Trying to dismiss the California courts and saying it was sloppy, so therefore it's not real. Talking about how it was multiple lawsuits, never actually talked about the other lawsuit, just focused on how the other one was sloppy. Talked about shit that wasn't harassment, just to paint, I guess Blizzard is more consenting to freaky shit than okay, who cares? So let's see what the comments have to say. Quite a few people have responded to the video with comments and social media posts saying things like, why are you saying this now years after publishing your book? Which is a truly devastating indictment of the current state of media literacy. Everything in this video is from Bloomberg reporting and from the book. You can read all by yourself above, just like the 3-year-old settlement that set off the grifters this week. This is old news. Again, you're not defending your fucking self. Measly rage-baiting Twitter journalist versus the mighty one-take schreier. I will never forget the employee stealing breast milk reporting for as long as I live. Yes. Holy shit. Hearing people both say Jason made up the claim and that he didn't speak up about the claims while knowing is funny. Never forget, HR is there for the company, not the people. This channel has been the best thing, yada, yada, yada. I can't even remember the last time I heard someone say suicide instead of unalive instead on YouTube. Hey, yep, we're there. Some people aggressively question reports written by professional journalists who are required to source and corroborate the news information they publish while openly embracing unsubstantiated rumors disseminated by influencers who are not accountable to anyone. By the way, this is not completely true. I find it funny that people think that people are that everything that's posted on a game journalist is now substantiated. That's not true. Maybe the olden days when you did newspapers and shit like that. Not anymore. Not anymore. I mean, it's crazy how people are so deluded that they don't realize that even game journalists clickbait, especially when they're opinion fucking based. Good. It's wildly fucked up that it was refreshing to hear suicide being called by its actual name instead of unalive or self-deleted. I was wondering why I haven't heard of this nonsense, and then you said tweet, and I fully understood. One take, schreier is a really cool nickname. 27 videos in, and we get the first title from the YouTube Unholy Trinity. It was obvious to anyone that the Kazi tweets were a joke about his sweaters. They were on the front page of MMO Champion at the time. Watching people in hindsight try to claim they were some kind of rapist cult was pretty strange to say at least. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like, it's weird. I don't think he's defended himself well enough, talking about how information was omitted in articles. It felt like a lot more of attack. Like, why are you attacking me? He did not do enough job at focusing on the facts. It was watered down. I think that people are attacking him for no reason, but I also believe that I truly believe that he's also a snake. Like, I believe both. I think both realities are true. Two truths can be true. There are people that are attacking him and being assholes for no reason. And then there's also the fact that he can be a snake, though I'm going to defer to that. That's where I'm at in this situation. But you guys can let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.